The silence of Arboria-7 was a living thing, a vast, echoing chamber where the hum of life support systems was the only lullaby. Reid Blake, Xenobotanist, had carved out a solitary existence within its sterile arteries, my days a precise dance of data collection, analysis, and the quiet contemplation of alien biomes. My universe was a microscope slide, a petri dish, the careful nurturing of life forms that had never known a terrestrial sun. This outpost, a pinprick of humanity against the infinite dark, was my monastery, my laboratory, my tomb. Then came the anomaly. My routine scan of Sector Gamma 9, a region previously deemed geologically stable and biologically inert, registered a faint, impossible energy signature. It pulsed, a silent thrum against the backdrop of cosmic static, drawing me deeper into the labyrinthine cave systems beneath the outpost's primary dome. The air grew heavy, thick with a scent I couldn't place, damp earth, ozone, and something else, something ancient and deeply resonant, like forgotten time. My suit's internal columns crackled with static, a minor inconvenience Reid Blake attributed to the deep rock. Gamma 9, entering sublevel 3. Readings are energy signature intensifying. And then Reid Blake saw it. Not a rock, not a mineral deposit, but a plant. It grew from a fissure in the rock, a single, impossibly robust stalk, coiling upwards like a forgotten serpent. Its leaves were obsidian, reflecting the beam not with a sheen, but with an absorbing depth, as if drinking the light. But it was the bloom that held me captive. A single, enormous flower, its petals unfurling in layers of impossible geometry, each segment a shade of deep violet that seemed to shift and breathe. It pulsed with a faint, internal luminescence, a soft, rhythmic beat that mirrored my own quickening heart. This was no mere alien flora. Its form defied known botanical principles, its structure seemed to twist the very fabric of space around it, subtly, almost imperceptibly. It exuded an aura of profound age, not the age of geological strata, but of eons, of time itself stretched thin and woven into living tissue. This specimen wasn't just non-terrestrial, it felt non-cosmic, a fragment torn from a reality I couldn't yet fathom. A thrill, pure and electric, shot through me. This was it. The discovery. The one that would redefine everything. Reid, you there? The voice of the detective crackled through my combs, jarring me from my trance. You've been off-grid for a while. Everything all right? More than all right, I replied, my voice raspy with awe. I've found something. Something extraordinary. Transporting the specimen back to my lab was an exercise in meticulous care. Reid Blake encased it in a specialized containment field, designed to mimic its native atmospheric conditions, though Reid Blake was guessing it best. Once secured, its bioluminescent aura intensified, casting a shifting, spectral glow across the sterile surfaces of my workspace. Time-lapse cameras, set to record its every shift, revealed not linear expansion, but a fractal unfolding. New leaves didn't sprout, they emerged from existing structures, as if the plant was constantly redrawing itself, each new iteration more complex than the last. The faint bioluminescence wasn't just light, it seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. And then there was the resonance. A subtle pressure behind my eyes, a faint, almost musical hum that seemed to originate not from the plant itself, but from within my own skull. Reid Blake dismissed it, of course. Just the novel electromagnetic field, Reid Blake rationalized aloud, adjusting his sensor array. Or perhaps a psychoactive compound I haven't isolated yet, affecting my optic nerves. The hum could be the containment field, vibrating at a frequency just beyond my conscious hearing. The pressure? Simple eye strain from long hours, coupled with the psychological toll of deep space isolation. Reid Blake was a scientist. Reid Blake sought rational explanations. Yet, as days bled into nights, the hum persisted. It wasn't a sound I heard with my ears, but rather a sensation, a gentle vibration against the very bones of my skull. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I could almost discern patterns within it, complex and fleeting, like ripples on an unseen pond. My excitement, initially a purely scientific fervor, began to intertwine with a nascent, unsettling fascination. This plant was more than just a biological marvel, it felt attentive, aware. My in-depth study became an obsession. I logged countless hours in the lab, fueled by nutrient paste and synthetic stimulants, my sleep schedule dissolving into a series of brief, agitated naps. The subtle shifts began. Peripheral glitches, at first. A flicker of movement in my vision, just at the edge, gone when I turned my head. They were still faint, still incomprehensible, but they were there. Not the hum anymore, but distinct, layered voices, like a chorus of distant, mournful wind chimes, or the hushed conversations of 1,000 strangers just beyond a thick wall. They seemed to emanate directly from the specimen, though no microphones registered a sound. One evening, while calibrating a spectral analyzer, I caught a glimpse of something in the reflection of the lab's polished floor, vague and indistinct, standing behind me. Arboria-7, once my sanctuary, felt less like a haven and more like a hermetically sealed box, its walls pressing in. I attributed it all to the stress, the endless data, the crushing weight of isolation that could warp even the most disciplined mind. It was a known phenomenon in deep space missions. The mind, starved of novelty, began to create its own. What if it was offered? The plant's growth accelerated dramatically. Within days, its single stalk had branched into a thicket of impossible forms, each segment a tessellation of geometric patterns that defied Euclidean space. They weren't growing outwards so much as folding into themselves, creating structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The violet bloom expanded, its petals now swirling with intricate, bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with an almost urgent rhythm. It was a living, breathing mandala, mesmerizing and terrifying. They were a constant, pervasive presence in my mind, a chorus of alien voices that spoke in a language of pure concept. I didn't understand words, but I understood the intent behind them: vastness, connection, redefinition. They resonated with the deepest parts of my being, stirring ancient fears and forgotten longings. I dreamt of a village shrouded in an eternal, thick fog. The buildings were ancient, crumbling stone, their roofs slumped under the weight of centuries. Figures moved through the mist, indistinct and silent, their faces always just out of focus. The air was heavy with the smell of damp earth and wood smoke, a primal scent that clung to me even after I jolted awake in the sterile confines of my quarters. Growing, I typed into my research log, my fingers trembling slightly. Exponentially. And the patterns. They're not biological. They're information. Structures of pure thought, made manifest. I found myself talking to the plant, my voice a low murmur in the quiet lab. What are you? It felt like standing at the edge of an infinite ocean, trying to grasp its entirety in a single breath. The foggy village dreams were no longer just dreams, they felt like memories, or perhaps, premonitions. The plant was not just influencing my perceptions, it was sculpting them. The increasing intensity of my experiences finally pushed me to seek external validation. I needed to know if I was truly losing my mind. If there was something tangible, something shared, in what I was perceiving. The growth is unprecedented, I explained to a colleague, a stern-faced geologist named Anya, over a lukewarm synthetic coffee in the mess hall. And the bioluminescence isn't just light, it's communicating. There's a resonance, a psychic influence. Anya stirred her coffee slowly, her gaze fixed on a distant wall. Display. Reid, we all know the plant is vigorous. The energy readings from your lab are off the charts, but that's what we're here for, isn't it? To study the unknown. She offered a polite, strained smile. But psychic influence? That's a bit much, even for Arboria-7. It's not just the plant, Anya, I pressed, my voice tight with frustration. I'm having experiences, hallucinations. Dreams of a foggy village, so real Reid Blake can taste the damp earth. He finally met my gaze, his eyes filled with a weary sympathy. Reid, you've been practically living in that lab. Sleep deprivation, isolation. It does things to a person. You're a brilliant Xenobotanist, but even the best minds can crack under this pressure. Perhaps a mandatory rest period is in order. Later that day, I tried to speak with the detective, catching him near the calm station. The plant is doing something to my mind, I stated, foregoing any pleasantries. It's not just a specimen, it's an intelligence. It's showing me things, making me perceive things that aren't real. The detective, a man whose face was perpetually etched with a calm skepticism, simply raised an eyebrow. Blake, Reid Blake, these seen men crack out here. You're over-identifying with your research. It's a plant. A fascinating one, no doubt, but still just a plant. He paused, then added, if you continue to report these hallucinations, I'll have to log it. They saw a scientist unraveling, not a man perceiving a truth too vast for their understanding. The isolation deepened, not just from the cosmos, but from my own kind. And in the corners of my vision, the edges of the sterile metal walls seemed to blur, softening, taking on the texture of ancient, damp stone. The faint scent of wood smoke, once confined to my dreams, now seemed to drift through the ventilation system. The unraveling was complete. My lab, once a bastion of scientific rigor, had become a shifting, breathing entity. The walls no longer held their metallic sheen, they rippled, like thick, gray fog, occasionally coalescing into the rough-hewn stone of ancient buildings. The sterile hum of the life support systems was replaced by the distant, mournful bleating of unseen animals, the creak of old wood, the soft, rhythmic splash of unseen water. Objects in my lab would appear to shift, to rearrange themselves when I wasn't looking. A data slate might suddenly be on the floor, or a tool might vanish, only to reappear moments later in my hand. Spatial dimensions distorted. The corridor outside my lab, which I knew to be a mere 20 meters long, would sometimes stretch into an endless, fog-shrouded alleyway, its end obscured by the swirling mist. My sense of time fragmented, days bleeding into indistinguishable nights. Was it Tuesday? Had I eaten? Did it matter? It spoke. Not with words, but with overwhelming, reality-warping concepts that flooded my mind. It was a language of pure being, of interconnectedness, of identity dissolved and reformed. It showed me the universe not as a collection of discrete objects, but as a single, vast, living consciousness, constantly reweaving itself, constantly redefining its own existence. And I, Reid Blake, was a tiny thread, being unspooled, unraveled, to be rewoven into its grand design. I was no longer in Arboria-7. I was in the village. The foggy village. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. The light, perpetually dim, filtered through the pervasive mist, painting everything in shades of gray and muted violet. I could feel the rough texture of stone beneath my boots, hear the distant, sorrowful pipe music that seemed to emanate from the very fog itself. The plant, my plant, was the heart of this place, its glowing presence a beacon in the swirling gray. My identity, once so firmly anchored in logic and scientific method, was dissolving. Who was Reid Blake? Was he the Xenobotanist, meticulously cataloging alien life? Or was he a figure in the fog, a part of this ancient, shifting reality? The cosmic intelligence, manifesting through the plant, sought not to destroy me, but to redefine me. It was not malevolent, not in any human sense, but utterly, terrifyingly alien. It wanted to expand its perception, to integrate my consciousness into its own, to experience existence through my unraveling sanity. I looked at my hands. They seemed translucent, shimmering at the edges, as if they might dissipate into the fog at any moment. The reflection in a nearby puddle, or was it a polished metal surface, showed not my face, but a blurred, indistinct impression, like a face seen through heavy mist. A figure emerged from the fog, indistinct but familiar. The detective or a villager? He approached, his steps silent. Reid, a voice, distant and muffled, seemed to call my name. Are you all right? I looked at him, or at the shifting shape that was him, and smiled. Reid Blake am the fog. Reid Blake am the light that breathes through the ancient stone. The figure stopped, a faint flicker of concern on its face. It reached out a hand, but I stepped back, melting deeper into the swirling mist. My lab, my outpost, my identity, they were gone, dissolved into the vast, reweaving consciousness that was the plant, that was the fog, that was everything. I was no longer Reid Blake. I was a part of the redefinition. And the fog, endless and ancient, stretched out before me, inviting me to become one with its eternal, silent hum.